Hello, one and all. My name is A Leg of Glazed Ham, and today I want to talk about one specific horror game, and that game is 2015's Until Dawn. Before I begin my surprisingly structured descent into madness, I just want to get a crucial point across now. When rated objectively, the gameplay is repetitive, the horror tends to rely heavily on jump scares, and the controls are pretty poor. But the choice based choose your fate story, phenomenal voice talents, and the unique twist halfway through the game are good enough to balance out the game's problems and earn it a score of 6 out of 10 objectively. With this in mind, that's viewing this game objectively, but who cares about objectivity? When viewed as a schlocky B movie horror game, this is I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? So, before I begin and give away my final thoughts, let me go through all that led me to my final conclusion in a quote review with more title cards than you could possibly ever want, and be warned there will be spoilers. And I would really recommend playing this one for yourself before you listen to me talk about it, because experiencing this unspoiled as possible is something I wish I could have done, but alas, I can't. Regardless, for those of you who are watching on anyways, let's start this off with a story recap. I normally don't do this for reviews, but I'm feeling like this is the best format for me to talk about this game compared to a proper talks about. So here we go. Actually, before I begin, I need to do something I haven't done in forever and say that the story I tell will only follow the choices I made during my original playthrough of the game. And when I inevitably talk about the other endings and trophies and stuff, I'll cover the other choices of note. But for my own sanity, we'll start off simple, and I won't exceed 16 pages of script. I simply refuse to, so if I don't get to everything, then that's on me. So assume I was killed and there's someone mimicking me to forcibly wrap this up. Josh's twin sisters died tragically, and so, on the anniversary of their death, Josh decides to get the group back together for a weekend of mountaintop winter fun at his family's ski lodge. It's about 10 p.m., it's February, cold and stormy, the perfect weather for being high above the mucky muck, with people who inadvertently got Josh's sisters killed. And so, the people are starting to arrive to the lodge, and the first of our 8 friends we get to meet is Sam. She's probably my third favorite character in the game, and for a good reason. She's a badass, she's this game's final girl, and she's essentially this game's kung fu. Don't know what that means? Don't worry about it, you just need to experience more horror movies. Anyway, we'll get more in depth on my thoughts for each character later on, so let's get back to the plot. Get introduced to the core mechanic of the game, choice, and quick tim events, where you have to climb over the fence to begin the trek up to the cable car station. Upon reaching the station, you see an unattended backpack with a phone hanging out of it. It's time to make a choice: close the bag or snoop. And since your actions have consequences, I chose to close the bag. And then, the owner of the backpack shows up, and since I didn't snoop, he was happy to see me. Who is this guy? I'm glad you asked. He's Chris. He's my favorite character here, even though he looks like a grown-up version of that one Polar Express kid, you know, the one with glasses. Yeah, that one. He's the most fun of the characters. He's a good guy, he has a crush on Ashley, and he may be a little stupid, but he's a cool, goofy guy. Anyhows, as the two shoot the shit waiting for the cable car to come down, Chris takes the time to literally shoot shit at the shooting gallery that's here at the base of the Blackwood Pines Mountain, or as I called it when I realized what you can spell by switching 2 letters around. Regardless of the stupid name, make an important choice as you're shooting a squirrel pops up on the range, and so, you need to understand a very important lesson in surviving horror media. It's quite a simple lesson, and you'd better take that shit to heart, otherwise you're not gonna survive. After learning our core lesson, the cable car has arrived, and we head up to the mountaintop lodge. As the two ascend the mountain, Chris talks about how he met Josh for the first time back in like 3rd grade because of some random ass series of events that led to the teach moving Chris to the back of the room where Josh sat, and thus they became friends. He brings us up to say it's interesting to think about how much seemingly small and innocuous events can impact the rest of your life, and really is an interesting comment on how life is strange. Eventually, we reach the top of the mountain, and we meet Jessica, or as everyone likes to call her, Jess. She's the hot friend, and as such, she gets a total of like 30 minutes of screen time at the most, but she's a fun character, and I wish they let her be on screen more, but alas, we can't have such nice things. But don't worry, we'll get there when we get there. Anyways, she's up here waiting for her boyfriend, and we'll properly introduce him later, but for now, after Chris and Sam continue the rest of the crime, we switch to another set of characters as they approach the lodge. And this is where we meet She's the biggest asshole in this entire game and has zero redeeming qualities. She's abusive, she hates everyone, she treats her boyfriend like human garbage, and she doesn't deserve to survive until dawn. Who is her boyfriend, you ask? Well, he's Matt. Matt is a cool guy. He has the patience of a saint, good problem solving, and conflict resolution skills, and he really deserves better than M. He deserves to survive because he's the requisite horror movie genuinely good fella. Anyhows, as Emma bitches and Matt as the two continue the ascent, they go through an archway, and we get jump scared by Mike, Dollar Store Nathan Drake, not actually a doctor, Dr. Sex, whatever you want to call him. Mike is the requisite horror hot guy, TM, and he's Emily's ex-boyfriend, and he's currently seeing Jess. Matt has the option to show his conflict resolution skills or be an ass when confronted with Mike, and I'm only following my choices here, so Matt does diffuse the situation by acknowledging the awkwardness between Mike and M now, so we can get it out of the way. Mike understands, and they've buried the hatchet, and he heads off back towards the cable car to find Jess. M then makes a lame-ass excuse and heads back towards the cable car because she, quote, left a bag behind. Yeah, right, bitch. You just want to try and cheat. I know your game. Matt is oblivious to his girlfriend's shitty behavior, and so we watch Matt carry the rest of M's bags up to the lodge as we switch to our next character. Ashley. She's not quite the final girl archetype, but she's on track to be one. She's this game's equivalent of prof. Still don't understand what that means? Don't worry, just watch more horror movies. And of course, she has a crush on Chris, but neither of them will admit it because what's a horror without them two characters that clearly love each other, but don't know that the other actually feels the same way. I'm sure there's a term for this, but I don't care. So now that we've introduced Ash, we cut to her looking through a pair of binoculars, and she sees the man of sex and the biggest bitch in the whole wide world hugging in a way that seems a little too friendly for people who, just broke up. And then we get a surprise Matt jump scare! Ash is appropriately spooked, and after calming down, Matt asks if he can see the binoculars. You can prevent him from seeing it by being weird, or you can let him see and not let the truth vanish into darkness. Don't understand that reference? What the hell is wrong with you? How do you not know the iconic game over line from Dead Rising? Quote, the truth has vanished into darkness. Moving on from my disappointment in you for not knowing Dead Rising, Matt is appropriately saddened by M's behavior, and as it is revealed later, it wasn't actually anything bad, because Mike may be the horniest asshole this side of... I actually don't have a good way to finish that joke. I'm sorry. We then cut back to Jess, and you can either read a book or check your phone. Regardless of what you do, a wild snowball comes and smacks you in the face. Who threw that? Well, it was thrown by Mike, and you get a few options here. But essentially, you get into a goddamn the fight until Mike has Jess on the ground, and you have a choice. Kiss Michael! Grab a snowball, or do nothing. Commit to the bit and kiss him, and then head up to the lodge with no problems since you took the lesson of never harm nature earlier. And we fade to black, and we're a gloved hand in a therapist's office? Huh, I didn't expect this. But anyway, this is... Ah, shit. I meant... Dr. Hill. He asks you some questions through the course of the game and provides some interesting insights into the mind of you? It's hard to explain without dropping huge spoilers, but just know he signals the end of every chapter, and your choices during these sessions can impact the story, so choose wisely, and choose honestly. We then return to our group of friends as Chris using women inside, but he can't do it alone. He needs the help of Josh. It's finally time to get introduced to this guy. He's really weird, obviously and understandably shaken by the loss of his sisters, but he's unnecessarily crass and sexual. He's a bit gross, but hey, he's rich, he's our host, and he's our friend. So we're here to help him in this trying time. Anyways, before we begin our mission of breaking into the house, Chris talks to Ash and says it's good to be back, asks her how she's doing, and all that good stuff, before following Josh towards the back of the lodge to find a way in. Behold! An open window! I think we found our way in, but not our way to open the door. Josh has a solution, and a very Beavis-esque solution that surely won't be a recurring theme. Fire! He tosses Krish a lighter and says that there's a can of spray deodorant in the bathroom upstairs, and so you have a goal. Chris begins to comb his way through the lodge, or he can go straight to the bathroom and miss out on all of the clues contained within the house. We'll touch on the clues later, but for now just know they exist and will be on the test. Eventually, enter the bathroom and find the spray, but as you go to grab it, you get jump scared by a baby Wolverine, because what's Canada without Wolverine? Anyways, upon retrieving the can, flamethrower the door and burn your hand opening it. Chris may be in slight pain, but everyone files inside this unreasonably large house, away from the cold and into a weekend of fun, laughs, and if you're Mike and Jess, sex! Because this is still a horror movie, goddammit. And so, with all 8 people within the lodge, it's time for the distrust to begin, because we have got to get to the horror. Since Matt saw Mike and M, he confronts Mike, but ultimately backs off because it isn't actually anything to worry about, as Mike has Jess, who objectively is better than him. And since Matt diffused the situation, it's time for Emily to just further your hatred for her, because she just randomly decides to start attacking Jess. The girls are fighting. Matt tries to defuse the situation, but Emily ain't having any of that, because she's the least likable character I've come across since that blue-haired girl from Arcadia Bay. Emily just goes off on Jess and Matt completely unprovoked, and don't worry, she's only going to get worse from here. Josh eventually intervenes and tells Mike and Jess they can go stay in the guest cabin, and they leave, and everything is fine. And of course I lied, because apparently Emily did forget a bag. Some expensive bag she picked up on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, California, and she immediately blames Matt for losing it. Because do you get it yet? Do you understand how infuriating this character is? She's rich. She's a bitch to literally everyone. She abuses poor Matt, who did nothing wrong, and she does everything in her power to be the least likable person you've ever thought of. She's the kind of person who'd watch 101 Dalmatians and think Cruella de Vil had the right idea trying to turn those puppies into a coat. She's literally the worst non-war criminal person you could ever conceive of, and she can't keep getting away with this. She can't keep getting away with this. And now that Emily has thoroughly pissed off everyone, including me, Sam goes upstairs to take a bath, and we cut back to Mike and Jess, who have been exiled. Or, as Jess says, sexiled. I wish I had the lack of imagination required to write dialogue like this. And speaking of bad dialogue, yikes! The cliche horny horror couple dialogue they have is abysmal, but it is par for the course, and since the first half of this game is a cliche slasher, we have gotta have the obligatory couple that go off to do some naughty things in the woods. Blah blah walking through the woods, but uh-oh, the path to the cabin is blocked, so we gotta cut through this conveniently located mine that just so happens to be here among these mountains. Jess falls down, and Mike jumps down to help his lady immediately. Mike discovers some weird looking bird by a bird, and Jess throws a snowball at him while on top of a log. And when Mike goes to retaliate with a snowball of his own, Jess has disappeared, screaming into the woods beyond the log. And we leave this cliffhanger to go back to the lodge and check in on Sam. Last time we checked in on Sam, she went upstairs to take a bath. We cut to her trying to fill the tub, but the water is cold despite what Josh had promised, and so Sam has to go hunt down Josh. She looks through Hannah's room, finding all sorts of clues about the twins before she finally heads downstairs to go get Josh to fix the hot water. Josh is failing to light the fireplace. Krish and Ashley have a bet on whether he's going to be able to light it at all, or if they're just going to have to resort to just blankets. But, against all odds, Josh manages to light the fire, and everyone cheers. As Sam approaches the group, Josh tells Krish and Ash there's a Luigi board somewhere in the house, and if they find it, the three of them can have a seance, because once again, I need to remind you, this is actually a horror game, and not a game about a bunch of young adults hanging out for the weekend. Regardless, Chris and Ashley head off to search, while Josh and Sam head down to the basement to turn on the boiler. Josh and Sam talk about how Chris and Ashley just need to get together, and Josh has some interesting comments to make. Specifically things like, quote, he won't actually do anything unless someone's holding a gun to his head. Or, quote, I swear they just need, like, something to bond over, you know? Some sort of traumatic event to send them into each other's arms, end quote. Depending on whether or not Sam chose to be mocking or flattering. Regardless, considering this is a horror game, what could be small innocuous dialogue from a weirdo is incredibly ominous. One could say it's foreshadowing, but they'd be wrong, because this isn't actually a horror game. I don't know who told you it was. Anyhow, it's time to start the boiler deep within this absurdly large basement that's larger than most houses. I know I've said this a fair amount, but at least about the absurdity of the house size. Because seriously, this place is massive. And the size of the property is even more absurd because, as the game reminds you several times throughout, the Washington family, i.e. Josh's family, owns this mountain. And I don't mean that in a, we own this town, Stephen King bully kind of way. I mean it literally. This family is beyond wealthy. And the game never really talks about the immeasurable wealth of the Washingtons, but my god, they should. Apparently Josh's dad is a horror filmmaker. Wow, that's on the nose. But this doesn't justify or explain how they can afford this likely hundreds of millions of dollars worth of property up in the, quote, Alberta side of the Canadian Rockies in Canada, according to this game's wiki. This said, the location of this mountain is very interesting, but surely this won't be important later, right? Anyhows, reach the boiler, examine an old baseball bat, cause butterfly effect because this action will have consequences, fix the generator, and nearly miss a high five from Josh. Josh will remember this. But right now, he has better things to do, like try and prank Sam when a loud noise happens. Sam doesn't fall for it and immediately turns the tables on him and pranks him back, successfully doing a minuscule amount of Josh-ing. I hate that joke. And fail to understand how tennis scoring works because you're, quote, more of a ping pong gal. Anyways, and then proceed to run when the source of the noise that Josh tried to prank you with turns out to be unrelated to Josh and was a robed... What the hell did I just say? Was a robed man in a mask. And now it's time to... run. Ascend the stairs, realize the door is locked, and then watch your fear fade away as it was just Chris doing some improvised trolling. What a guy. What a hero. Chris is the best. And on top of all that, Chris found a Waluigi board. As the trio go back to the main room, Chris and Ash have a fun little character moment, and Sam can finally go take her bath. But not before warning Chris and Ash to watch out, because Josh is a little schemer. We cut back to Matt and M. Except I forgot that no we don't, because that's special pre-order content that I don't have. Haha, I don't have to talk about Emily any more than I have to. And that's a relief I wish would last for the entire rest of the game. But I know it won't. And so we'll cut back to pay Dr. Hill a visit. and have a very short session in a room that's definitely starting to decay. Huh, that's wacky. Anyways, the night must go on, because we're now 8 hours away from dawn. So, full disclosure here, I've replayed this chapter at least 8 times trying to make everything or specific things happen out of curiosity, and all of that trial and error garbage, so I have a vendetta against this episode. So let's just speed run through it like I've done about 90 times. We play as Ashley, and it's seance time with Christopher and Josh. Wow, guide the group into discovering the spirit of Beth, who was killed, and apparently proof is in the library. Josh gets pissed and he leaves, so Chris and Ash head off to find the library to find the. And hey, remember Mike and Jess? Yeah, let's go back to that cliffhanger. Mike immediately jumps the log and sprints down the path to try and find Jess, only to get jump scared by her, to which she laughs and says she scared your pants off. You know the drill by now. Keep trying to appease and impress Jess, so when Mike finally calms down, be a brave boy and tell her that she's going to have to try harder than that to scare your pants off. Jess takes up the challenge and the two continue their odyssey to the guest cabin. Because at this point, it's been more than a trip and way longer than expected. And so their odyssey continues. Hear some spooky noises, don't throw snowballs at trees, remember to be a gentleman and not scare Jess, and remember the true golden rule of horror when you encounter a dying deer. Upon comforting the dying creature, watch it get yoinked into the woods and then book it to the cabin. Run fast, don't mess up any QTEs, help Jess up, open the cabin door, and escape whatever the hell that thing was. However, we are finally safe, and in a cabin that's apparently like 3.2 miles, sorry, 5 kilometers away. And now Mike and Jess can finally get to do what they set out to do. And we then cut to this weird glowy red POV from outside the cabin as Jess dresses down to her undies and Mike gets down to his tank top without losing his pants. Then the Funky Town shenanigans, TM, get interrupted by a phone getting thrown through a cabin window. And Jess goes outside to scream at the cause of these disturbances that you can't stop her and Mike from following the advice of track 6 from the first Tenacious D album. After Jess finishes her speech, she shuts the door, and before she can get away from the door, she gets yoinked through the window by some thing. Chris, because surely Jess will be fine. Surely. And so we're back in the lodge, and it's time to search for in the library. And what clues do we find? Oh, you know, the standards like, there's a masked killer loose in the lodge? Ay caramba! And they hear a noise in the kitchen. They go to investigate it, and of course, the masked killer, or as they so affectionately call him, the psycho, he knocks out Ashley, and then Chris gets bonked on the head, and we watch Ash get dragged away before fading to black and fading back in on Dr. Hill's office. He asks the gloved mystery man about who he likes the most from the group, who he dislikes, and makes some interesting remarks, and ultimately, my final choice for least favorite person in the group was, you guessed it, Emily, thus surprising no one. And even he agrees with me that Emily is the worst, because he also... Oh, sorry, I messed that up. Let's try that again, shall we? And even he agrees with me that Emily is the worst, but also he does insult me at the same time when he says, quote, Emily is a bit too bitchy for your taste. Often a lack of confidence manifests itself as overconfidence. Think about that. Is that not just a little bit like you? Because, first of all, Dr. Hill, my confidence was false from the start, so jot that down, you condescending dick. And second of all, maybe you're not even real. Did that ever cross your mind? I mean, you can't be real. Your office is deteriorating. None of this is real, right? Episode 4, and we're back to Mike. He's on a dead sprint to catch up to Jess as she's getting dragged through the woods by this thing. And you better go fast as you can, because her life depends on it. So do an ungodly amount of quick tim events, and hopefully reach Jess while she still has a jaw. Since I was fast, Mike got there while Jess was still alive, and she's unable to move laying on an old elevator, which promptly falls down into the mines as you try to rescue her. Jess is still alive. Just know that you won't see her again until like an hour before dawn. Thanks, game. I really appreciate not seeing one of the better characters that I actually like for like 60% of the game. Observe a shadowy figure at the top of the elevator shaft. We gotta investigate. Climb stuff with more QTEs, chase the man, and don't shoot the stranger, since you can't actually shoot the stranger. Your gun is jammed. Follow him down the rest of the corridor and gaze upon the sanatorium. You have a target and a large distance to cross, so we let Michael cross this mountain range. We cut back to Chris, who is starting to regain consciousness after the psycho sucker punched him. He gains consciousness and follows the trail to the barn. Within the barn is a saw trap, and then the voice of the psycho plays, cementing the fact that this is a trap straight out of the Saw movies. Okay, so I may have not told you the whole truth just then, but there is an actual Saw trap, where we see Ash and Josh hung up by their wrists at the end of a split track. It's quite literally the trolley problem setup, except it's not a trolley, it's a giant buzzsaw that starts moving down the track. Cheers has to choose who lives and dies, and so he saves Ashley, and watches in horror as the buzzsaw will always go down Josh's track, and cut him in half, thus sending blood flying everywhere and leaving Josh hanging. Kinda like Sam did earlier. Anyway, although, if you look closely, you can actually tell that Josh's guts are fake, because the characters won't recognize this. They're far too traumatized for that level of astute observation. Chris then is able to go into the room and free Ashley, and as they leave to head back to the lodge, they find Matt and Em. They talk about what the hell just happened, and realize they need to try and get out of here while saving everyone else. Chris and Ash head to the lodge to try to save Sam, while Matt and Em go to try and get help. And we cut back to Dr. Hill for the next session. He's pretty concerned about, quote, this little game of yours, and eventually he asks if you even think he's real, and comes to realize that you, whoever you are, can't even tell the difference between fact or fiction anymore. And so this session ends, and we've got 6 hours until dawn. While Chris was busy being the protagonist of Saw 10, Mike made his way into the sanatorium by following the Stranger and his wolves. This place has been closed ever since the 1952 incident. What was the incident? Don't worry about that just yet, but considering there was a major mining accident the year prior and we're in the mountains, we can make some logical assumptions about what happened. I won't tell you now, so I'll leave you with your suspicions and guesses. Anyways, Mike does Mike stuff and explores the sanatorium. The Stranger is in the church, and Mike can't open the door since he doesn't have a key card. Oh boy, it's time to explore this rundown sanatorium full of God knows what. Eventually you reach the morgue, and you'll see some really weird, like a weirdly mutated human skull and some death certificates and all that jazz. Strange. Anyways, find the key card in one of the body drawers and ascend back up to the church door after being chased by one of the Stranger's wolves. Remember the golden rule, and don't hit the wolf that approaches you when you enter the chapel. In fact, if you look around, you'll find a chest full of meat that you can use to befriend the wolf. The community likes to call him Wolfie, but I like to call him Big Guy, because that's one of the many names that Mike calls him later on. And so, explore the rest of the chapel, find a jacket because Mike has been running this whole time in a tank top, and it's surprising that he didn't die of hypothermia. Come to think of it, it's a miracle Jess doesn't die of hypothermia down there in the mines. Crazy how that works. Anyways, Mike is armed and dangerous once again when he acquires a revolver and makes his way through the exit of the sanatorium, and he causes an explosion that won't harm him, but leaves you with a cliffhanger as we cut back to Matt and Em. So, Matt and Em have a bullshit adventure where they discover that the cable car isn't working, so they're stranded up here in the hills with no hope. But there is hope, and it's the radio tower. And after making this discovery, they begin the run towards the radio tower where someone will teach them the takedown in this Ubisoft game. Along the way, they end up approaching a cliff, and it's an interesting spot because it's actually where Hannah and Beth fell and died in the prologue that I chose to ignore. Anyways, look at the broken danger sign and then turn around to find that you're surrounded by deer. And the deer look kinda angry, and they're approaching menacingly, So let's leave this cliffhanger and check in on Sam, because it's time for the unintentionally funniest segment in the game. Sam was taking a bath and listening to music, which means she is blissfully unaware of the fact that the Psycho is standing right behind her. And it means she's currently unaware of the final girl circuit she's about to go on without her clothes, since they have been stolen by the Psycho. And when he slams the door leaving, which causes the candles to go out, Sam is about to become painfully aware of what's going on. Emerge from the tub, don your towel, and search for your clothes. Sam has the logical reaction and starts to immediately question the balloons with arrows on them, but inevitably she follows the arrows and ends up in the home theater. We watch in horror as the Psycho plays a video of Sam in the bath before showing Sam the video of Josh being sliced in half, and as she recoils in shock, the Psycho gives her 10 seconds to run, and he enters the room after he says 8 seconds. Sam then sprints through the halls and into the basement. Descending further and further into the basement, we get the chance to hide, so shut off the flashlight and don't move. The Psycho killer will have his back turned to you, and I chose to book it. He catches Sam and attempts to knock her out. But, since my actions have consequences, I was able to grab the baseball bat from earlier and save myself. Keep on running and enter an abandoned hotel that's underneath the lodge? What the hell is going on here? That's a mystery for later, but for now, we gotta successfully evade capture in an old elevator shaft. And if we do this, the Psycho has given up, and Sam has been saved. For now. And so, guess what time it is? It's Dr. Hill time! He starts talking about how your, quote, game hasn't gone to your plan, and he starts chastising you, only for the chair you're normally in to be empty, and then for the camera to pan over and reveal that the man who's normally in the chair during these sections is actually the Psycho? Huh. Can this night really get any stranger? We cut back to Matt and Em on their cliffside nature encounter. Matt manages to keep being the hero and diffusing every possible situation by keeping Em calm so they can just walk on through the herd without being harmed. Since we continue to follow the golden rule and never harm nature, our reward is that we can continue heading to the radio tower. And so they make their way over there, climb the tower, and desperately try to get a rescue helicopter to come save them. The signal is choppy, but comply with the operator and secure a chopper that'll be able to rescue you when the storm subsides by dawn. And then the tower collapses. Yep, the support ropes were cut and the tower fell into the mines. And Matt has to make a choice. Try and save him at the risk of definitely, dying, or save himself and risk needing to climb out of the mines later. Regardless of your thoughts on Em, she'll get out of this alive, so Matt must make the right call and jump to save himself. Em just ain't worth dying for, man. After our tower adventure, let's check back in on Chris and Ashley, shall we? The two mutually pining idiots are exploring the lodge, and Ash decides to take a moment to thank Chris for saving her life, knowing how hard it must have been to trolley problem Josh. And Chris just doesn't want to talk about that yet. So the two continue on their mission to find Sam. The two descend deeper and deeper into the lodge, going on a paranormal adventure? Yeah, apparently there's some spooky, scary ghosts running around the lodge, but surely they can't be real, right? You get some standard ghost activities like objects flying out at you, doors suddenly slamming shut, etc., etc., but eventually our heroes descend even further into this abandoned hotel, and eventually we find nothing of value! Wow, what a great use of my time! Anyways, things have been a little too calm recently, so Mr. the Psycho decides he's had enough, and he knocks out Chris and goes to knock out Ash. However, Ash is a final girl in spirit, so she had to pick up a pair of scissors earlier, and she stabs the Psycho in the arm in an effort to get away. This doesn't work, and all that matters is that the Psycho just decks Ash in the face after making a Chris wakes up strapped to a chair when he hears the voice of the bootleg Jigsaw wannabe, and then he said, Hello, Chris. If you look down, you notice your balls have been covered in milk and breadcrumbs. Before you lies a KFC deep fry. And you look down in horror to see that it's true. I'm sorry, I lied. The opportunity was too good to not use that gag here. What actually happens here is that Chris and Ashley are strapped to chairs on opposite ends of a table. Ashley can't move, and Chris has one arm not strapped to the chair. Before him on the table is a gun, and above them is another literal saw trap, ready to descend upon them. If Chris chooses to do nothing, they'll surely both die. So Chris must make a choice here. Does he save himself by sacrificing Ashley, or does he sacrifice himself to save the girl? As they sit here panicking, Ashley starts to lament about how they always danced around their obviously mutual feelings, and how they wasted every chance they had. But Chris, ever the hero, drops the hardest line possible with, quote, "Ashley, none of it was wasted. Every second that I spent with you was the only thing I ever wanted to do with my time." And then, as the saws start to descend, Chris puts the gun to his head, and we fade to black as we hear a gunshot ring. We'll fade back on a Dr. Hill session that's pretty much just Dr. Hill ripping into the Psycho, talking about how he's gone too far, and he calls him a psychopath, before we get another recap and continue our story. So last we checked in on her, Sam had just escaped the Psycho, and she's in the abandoned hotel just like everyone else. She explores what's apparently the Psycho's workshops, finds some clues, and eventually stumbles across the room with the mannequin and her backpack. And through a vent in the floor, we see a door open, and it's Mike? Okay, things just keep getting weirder because apparently the asylum is connected to the abandoned hotel, which is connected to the lodge. What a strange property we're on. Anyways, Sam and Mike have found each other, and they begin to confirm things about the Psycho being here, Jess apparently being dead because of Mike, or the Psycho, I don't remember which, and all of that. But more importantly, neither of them are alone. Sam gets the opportunity to change into real clothes, and thus ends her magic towel adventure. Our two intrepid adventurers then explore deeper into this hell maze, and they find Chris and Ashley still trapped. As everyone is here panicking to hell and back, we see the Psycho approach, and Chris tries to shoot the Psycho, but fails to consider that the gun has nothing but blanks, considering that he shot himself in the head and didn't die. Anyways, as everyone is horribly confused, the Psycho killer takes his mask off and reveals that it was Josh the whole time. Who could have seen this coming? I mean, it's not like the game actually foreshadows this really well, with things like the guts being obviously fake, the therapy sessions clearly being delusions since a medical record reveals that Josh stopped taking his meds, tape recorder that has Josh trying to do his best Tobin Bell impression, and more. All are all clues that hint towards this twist pretty subtly. It's a neat attention to detail that you could figure this all out before you even get to this moment. Hey, how's M doing? Well, let's find out. Against all odds, she's alive. And would you look at that? She's down in the mines because everything's connected on this godforsaken mountain. Anyways, M has to explore the mines a bit, finding some really awful things like Beth Washington's decapitated head and other such clues about the fate of the Washington sisters 1 year ago today. M eventually has a run-in with the stranger, and she's got to run like hell. But alas, you can't hide, but you can't hide. Wait, I'm sorry. M eventually has a run-in with the stranger, and she's got to run like hell. But alas, you can hide, but you can't hide from the stranger. But that's for later. So let's leave M on a cliffhanger and check back in on the main group. So as Ashley, Chris, Mike, and Sam stand/sit dumbfounded by the reveal that it was Josh the whole time, he gives a whole monologue about why he did what he did. In this Shakespearean soliloquy, he tells how all of the emotions the group has felt tonight — fear, terror, humiliation, panic — All of these things they now get to laugh off are the same emotions his sister felt 1 year ago, only they didn't get to laugh it off. And like a Scooby-Doo villain, he reveals how he did it, from the gore to the ghosts to every other little scare. He talks about how it was all perfectly crafted to make this night one they'd never forget. And everyone is beyond pissed at him, because everyone thinks that Jess is actually dead because of Josh, only for it to be revealed that Josh genuinely had nothing to do with that. But Mike doesn't know that, so he knocks the little shit out using the handle of the 6-shooter he picked up in the asylum. We then cut to Mike and Chris dragging Josh to the shed, where they're gonna leave him tied up till morning. The two have a whole good cop, bad cop routine going, and Josh is still trying to taunt them the whole time. Eventually, Josh has pushed both guys too far, and they're ready to just beat him to death for his crimes, but they don't, and they leave him tied to a pole in the shed, where he and Mike will remain until dawn. Anyways, I did not hit him, so let's go home. Okay, I lied. We're going to start Chapter 8, since Josh didn't get a therapy session after that blunder. Oh, hi, Em. Let's see how things are going for you right now. Oh, that's not great. She's still alive. God damn it. Well, on the bright side, the stranger has now armed her with some flares, but he can't explain why before he has to whip out the flamethrower to attack some thing off screen, as M has to start running like hell when a monstrous hand launches towards her with a scream that's anything but human. Regardless of whatever the hell that thing is, you'd better get the hell out of there. And oh look, a conveniently located elevator. Better start that thing up fast before the entity chasing you can catch up with you. And for a brief moment, Emily thinks she's safe. And that was until we see these eyes appear right behind her. Don't move, otherwise it'll spot you and rip your face off. Eventually, you run far enough and distract the creature long enough to have escaped for now. She's in front of a locked door before a zipline, and instead of moving forward immediately, the creature bursts through the door and very quickly goes on Emily's shoulder. But she's able to get on the zipline and rush back to the lodge, still alive, but still screaming furiously. We quickly cut to Mike, who, having heard the scream, leaves Josh completely alone in the shed as he books it towards the lodge. Emily has reached the lodge and is reunited with the core group. She immediately starts freaking out about the monster that attacked her, but more importantly, if she found enough clues down in the mines, she can tell the group what actually happened 1 year ago today. And as that happens, there's a loud banging at the back door, so Chris and Michael go to investigate. Regardless of who has the gun upon opening the door, the stranger walks in and takes it from him, and he's here to tell them why they messed up coming back to this mountain. It may legally belong to the Washingtons, but really, this mountain belongs to... And now, 3 hours till dawn, we're introduced to the real monster of the game, the Wendigo. Well, Wendigos, because there are a lot more than just one out there, and so Chris realizes that Josh is still out there, and even after everything he put them through, he's still his friend. Thus, Chris is going to go save him. The stranger tells him that going alone would be suicide and says he's going to go with them, while the others should find somewhere safe to hide out. Until when? I don't know. Emily says they've got to hide until dawn, but that sounds stupid, so it surely can't be the answer. The stranger told them that the Wendigos only hunt at night, so they've got to make it until daybreak. With our goals set, the stranger throws Chris a shotgun, and they prepare to leave. But not before Ashley comes up and we have our kiss the girl moment, as she gives him a kiss for good luck and tells him to come back safe. Then our rescue team sets out to find Josh, and we get some Wendigo lore. For example, they can only be killed with fire because their skin is bulletproof, they only hunt at night, their vision is movement-based, so you gotta stand still if you want to escape them relatively unharmed. Cool. And you know what's not cool? The fact that Josh has disappeared. Turn around and realize shit has hit the fan because the stranger immediately tells you to not move, and then watch in horror as a Wendigo just rips his goddamn head off. Chris then uses his shotgun to temporarily buy himself some time as he books it back to the lodge. Upon reaching the door, Ash opens the door for him, and we see the Wendigo hit the door before we go down to the basement and reunite in the safe room. During his final girl circuit, Chris definitely screwed his leg up and he'll be limping until the end, so I thought I'd mention that now because surely it won't be relevant later, right? Anyways, y'all ready for fight night? Because we can't have a piece of horror media without the pointless infighting. So the group gets into a fight when Mike wants to blast a hole in M's skull when he sees that she was bit by the creature. Mike inevitably doesn't pull the trigger because he is a weak baby man, which means Emily has a chance to survive until dawn, but it means we're forced to deal with her bullshit until the end. Mike leaves to go find Josh since he had the cable car keys, and after he leaves, Ashley discovers, through the stranger's notebook, that Wendigo bites don't do shit, which means Emily is perfectly safe. And her reaction to Ash telling her that is to slap her in the face because she sided with Mike out of legitimate fear. Thanks, Em, you're beyond infuriating and I wish nothing but the worst for you. Anyways, the chapter ends with the rest of the group realizing they gotta stay together in order to survive. Oh yeah, we get another Dr. Hill sesh after this, but you don't care and neither do I. So let's finish the last 2 chapters and get through some basic review bullshit and call it a day. Shall we? Ready for Mike to go explore the sanatorium? Let's go. So Mike does Mike shit, TM, for a while and discovers that the asylum is just filled to the brim with Wendigos. We're talking at least 12, probably more. And Mike has a wacky adventure of doom with Big Guy as his guide, since we followed the golden rule of never harm nature. Anyways, Mike eventually escapes after shooting at and running from them goddamn Wendigos. And oh yeah, setting the whole asylum on fire! Jesus wept. But before we get we get a sequence of Sam and the rest of the gang going to find Mike. They reach a rock wall, and so Sam has to carry on alone as the others head back to the lodge. Anyways, Sam catches up to Michael. Michael makes a building full of Wendigos go, and we see just a swarm of Wendigo spirits fly around into the night sky. So, as they're back together, we have the last man standing and the final girl ready to go down into the lair of the beast and save the group. Sam and Mike go down and down into the deep. Who knows what they'll find beneath? We won't know for a bit, but not for very much longer, because Josh has to keep control. He's just losing it down in the caves, with visions of Hannah and Beth's corpses singing Frere Jacques, a bunch of giant pig heads, and a lot of other things. Since Josh doesn't have anything to make him comfortably numb, we're just gonna let him suffer for a bit as we cut back to Sam and Mike. They find a very crucial clue that reveals something we already knew. Hannah survived the fall. She ate Beth out of necessity. And she paid the ultimate price and became a Wendigo. Well, that wraps up that mystery. And oh hey look, there's Josh just going apeshit alone in the dark. Hi Josh! Snap Josh out of his delusion, and then we get our one section where we get to play as Josh, when Sam climbs out of the pit and Mike is tasked with guiding Josh to safety. Sam got the cable car keys and she's off to make the sprint back to the lodge, so Josh and Mike have to carefully navigate back up to the surface, only for Josh to get grabbed by a Wendigo. But not just any Wendigo, because look at the shoulder. Do you see it? It's a butterfly tattoo. And you know who had that exact tattoo? Hannah. Josh is able to register this, and he is spared by his former sister, and as she drags him away, still alive, Mike is able to escape so he can set up for our big finale. And oh boy, what a finale it is. But before we get there, we get a quick diversion to Matt and Jess, since we kept them both alive. We must keep these two alive via calculated hiding, because Jess can barely walk. That said, Jess and Matt successfully hide, and have survived until daybreak. And now, since we've got 3 of the 8 saved, we've got to save the last of our crew in the epic finale. Sam has successfully climbed out of the caves and made the sprint back to the lodge. She's reunited with Mike, and they have a moment to casually walk down the stairs towards the basement until we see Ash, Em, and Chris just booking it up from the basement as a Wendigo is chasing them. We watch Em shove Ash in an attempt to kill her because Emily is beyond an irredeemable bitch. But don't worry, Ash isn't dead yet. Everyone is back in the main area, and we have not one, not two, but at least 3 Wendigos ready to duke it out amongst themselves and kill anyone caught in the crossfire. A Wendigo is slammed into the fireplace, thus causing a gas leak, which means we have a plan, and it's a good one. Mike sneaks his way over to break a light bulb, and Sam has to pull a very calculated series of shouts and movements in order to safely get Chris, Ash, Em, Mike, and herself out of the lodge. Upon everyone exiting, Sam books it to the door and flips the lights on, thus causing the lodge and Wendigos to go up in flames. And as our group sits outside, we look to see something shining brightly in the background as a rescue helicopter approaches. And congratulations, everyone has survived. Do you get it? Do you get the title card? That's the joke. You get it's the title of the game. Wow, I'm so not clever. And there you have it, the version where everyone made it until dawn, which is a feat much harder than you'd expect because dear god, I was so tempted to just let Emily die throughout the entire game. And before I talk about the rest of our cast, let's just get it out of the way and just complain about Em for a little bit. I wasn't exaggerating earlier when I called her, quote, the biggest bitch in the whole wide world, because she is. She verbally abuses Matt throughout the entire game. She constantly just wants to fight everyone. And I'll admit it, when Mike had the chance to shoot her, it's the most satisfying death in the entire game when he pulls that trigger. He shoots her in the eye, and the back of her head just gets obliterated in a fountain of blood that was completely deserved. She's awful, and I can't stand it. Her dialogue is atrocious, but I have to give a single bit of credit to her because she drops the immortal line of, "It was just a prank, Han," during the prologue I chose to ignore. Matt really deserved better. Emily constantly berates him and treats him like shit when all he does is be a great guy. He has every right to be concerned when Em sneaks off to talk to Mike, and yet nothing ever comes from that other than Emily trying to turn it around on him and essentially making it out like he's the bad person because he doesn't trust her? I don't know, man. It doesn't make any sense, and none of it makes sense. And yet, I don't really care because it's par for the course in horror to have the extremely unlikable couple. It's because of the idea that it's more fun to watch shitty characters die, and that is true to some extent, but if I'm tasked with saving everyone as my main goal, then I should at least like everyone. I like Matt, but the only time we ever really get to be with the character is when he's with Em, and he deserved better than that. Let him be his own character, damn it. Alright, look. We love Jess in this house, alright? I get it. She's supposed to be our stereotypical hot one, TM, in the friend group, but she's one of the most fun characters in the game despite how little she's actually in it. She's so much fun, from her positivity and pretty good sense of humor to her lighthearted interactions with Mike. She's great. And of course, her cussing out into the void when the Wendigo prevents her and Mike from completing their Funky Town shenanigans, TM, is a very funny moment that still makes me laugh. She deserved more screen time, but more importantly, shout out to her for surviving down in the mines in her undies in super cold conditions for several hours. She's a hero. Sam and her magic towel are still the funniest thing in this game. We like Sam. She's pretty much the exact final girl archetype, and I think you can piece together that one for yourself, given the whole story recap I gave. Same thing goes for Mike, actually. He's just the last man standing archetype, and I have little more to say other than he's a knockoff Nathan Drake. Josh is an interesting character. He's this Ghostface meets Jigsaw type killer on one side, but on the other, he's a clearly mentally ill man who needs more support. He stopped taking his meds, as we get to see from some of the clues, and we get glimpses into his mind throughout the game. This is why we get to see Dr. Hill, and it's why we see his office deteriorate as the game goes on. It reflects Josh's deteriorating sanity as the night goes on for longer and longer. It's an interesting idea for a would-be killer, and I say would-be since he never actually kills anyone. That said, he still comes off as really crass and creepy, like his comments about Ashley early in the game. They're really gross and needlessly sexual. And on an unrelated note, he's a master of foreshadowing. Josh's character is far more interesting on a replay because you get to really pick up on how his lines reflect the things he does later on. And that reflects to a larger point about how great the attention to detail is. The details in this game are so great. Like Josh's fake guts when he gets saw trapped, or Josh's lines about Chris and Ash needing a traumatic event to make them get together. It's all really well done. And I'm essentially required by law to talk about the Wendigos because they're legitimately horrifying. The cool thing about them in this game is that they're actually accurate version from native mythology. The design including the skin being this ash gray color of death, the bones stretching and skin getting drawn more tight, and it retaining that human shape is all pretty accurate to their original stories. In contrast, a lot of Wendigos in modern media have very animalistic features like antlers or a deer skull, which isn't how they should look according to original myths. Also, the setting of this game really matters because it's located in a region of Canada that would have been in Cree territory, which is a tribe that has legends of the Wendigo. It's a small touch, but it's so cool that they went to the lengths they did to make sure the setting would be accurate to the mythology of the creature. You already know that I love the rest of the cast, especially Chris and Ash. They're the real heart of the game, and I really like how we get to see their relationship grow. It's believable and set up really well so that when they think they're gonna die, they earned the right to use the whole every moment I spent with you was the only thing I ever wanted to do with my time thing. I think I already talked about it enough, and I don't want this to exceed 16 pages, so I'm in a bit of a crunch here. This is what I give for all of those title card jokes. So, what about the other kinds of runs you can do, I hear you ask? Well, there's a run where you kill everyone, that's to be expected. There's trophies tied to killing specific people in certain ways, like letting Mike shoot M, or having Ash kill Chris by not opening the door, or having Ash get evil deaded when she opens a trap door. There's a lot of chances for death, and they're pretty graphic. Like any good horror movie, these deaths are gnarly, man, which is great to see. There's like 256 unique combinations of endings depending on who lives, who dies, and so you get some variety if you want to try those out. The clues! Totems and other such collectibles are here. I don't have much to say. They're all very standard things, and they do annoy me a bit, especially given everything you have to do, but this isn't a nightmare to complete unlike. This game is something special. I mean, the dialogue is atrocious, the characters are stereotypes and archetypes we all already know, but the twists and creature designs are leagues above the competition and give an experience that you should have. Even with those flaws in mind, it's so goofy that they don't even matter. You will have a great time with this game. It's just so wacky and enjoyable that there's genuinely plenty of opportunity for replaying, and it would be a really fun time to play with friends. That said, as a video game, the controls aren't super great, the gameplay isn't that varied, and whatever else I said in the introduction. So, objectively, 6 out of 10. But as a fun, goofy, schlocky B-movie horror, this game is a 9 out of 10 experience that you need to have. It's so much fun, it's so cliche, it's so wonderful, and I need you to check it out. Maybe don't try to complete it, but have some fun, play it through a few times, see if you can blindly save everyone, or kill them all. Their fates are in your hand. And that's it. That covers everything I need to say here. So my name is A Leg of Glazed Ham, and I hope you enjoyed this exactly 16-page long script, spooky little journey in the mountains. Thank you for listening to me ramble. As always, it really means a lot. Thanks again, and good night.